Hi, John Brigham, Vice President here at Ikelite, and we just flew out to California to shoot the Canon EOS R5 with our good friend and ambassador, Gary Burns. Now, Gary is a chief aerospace designer for interiors by trade, but he's also an excellent photographer both above and below the surface. So we decided to sit down and have a chat with him about this camera and whether he thinks it's worth the upgrade. Throughout this chat, you'll see pictures and video taken with this camera, so we appreciate you watching. So Gary, I've watched you go from point and shoot to full frame 6D Mark II, and now obviously we're getting into this Canon R5 mirrorless. Now, from my perspective, this upgrade is for the autofocus system. But what are you seeing? What are you seeing here?
Well, relative to myself, it's a real evolution change. As you know, I started with a simple point and shoot, and then the DSLR approach, and with this new camera, from what I've learned, I've read, we discussed, the dynamic range that this camera has, the focusing it has, the flexibility and the customization, especially related to how we connect it to the housing, is significant. And to quote a phrase, it really is a game changer. And the evolution of my own maturity of taking pictures on land and taking it underwater it's really it's an evolution change. So I'm really trying to, I'm in the infancy of learning this camera, but I think it's a great camera to for the future.
No, I think you're right. Definitely, I think game changer is an appropriate term for this. And I can't stress enough the autofocus system. So in addition to the crazy amount of additional points going from like 43 with your 6D Mark II to like 1,053,
Yeah, I know.
It's a significant amount of autofocus improvement, and also tracking. One of the things that is, when it first came out, I didn't know it would apply directly underwater, but I found that it actually does, which is this amazing autofocus system, but also eye tracking.
Yes.
And like, how would that translate? Obviously they designed it for humans and cats and dogs, but how would that translate underwater?
Well, that was, I must admit, like every new platform that comes out, I was apprehensive of using it. And fortunately, with our discussions and, trying to work out how the tracking worked, and that first dive we did, it was, to be very honest, to use a sort of a real strong adjective, it was phenomenal. If you recall, we were shooting the state fish, the Garibaldi, and I would literally just move the housing, focus on the eye of the Garibaldi, because it's a very sharp eyeball there, and it didn't matter where the Garibaldi moved, the camera was absolutely locked onto it. And I was shooting a relatively wide angle shot, so I had to get quite close, and so moving in and out it was just perfect. So I think it was a great system, this new tracking.
Well, we were lucky enough to have a really good dive. And, obviously Garibaldi, right? Staple, but then we were lucky enough to have Mola Mola.
Oh gosh, yeah, that was a unique opportunity to have that.
Right, and then, you did some work with some jellyfish that popped up kind of out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And, in this tracking and autofocus system, from what I can tell and from your images, you didn't seem to have any hiccups here. There was no issue going from one to another, because that all happened in a relatively rapid succession.
It did, yeah. And I think when I was shooting the Garibaldi, that was one element, because those fish are all over the place. With the mola, they are very inquisitive, and they're much bigger. And so, when I actually looked at this animal when it was coming close to me, and it was very curious about me, and whether it was looking at its own reflection through the dome port, I don't know, but I latched on with the autofocus, and its pals came around, and I was mid-water, so I was sort of adjusting my buoyancy and trying to take the picture, but it didn't matter. As long as I was locked onto that it was very precise.
Yeah, Gene had mentioned, like, in coming from shooting DSLRs myself, and I know you have,
where you'd see the autofocus points,
Yeah,
and it would be like here, here, or here.
Yeah.
But Gene was talking, it's like when you're shooting the R5, it's just you watch this cloud of focus points. You can watch it follow your subject, which is just incredible how accurate and fast that happens.
And it's instantaneous.
Yeah.
I was shooting, looking up in mid-water, sort of where the light of the blue as it's changing, and I had the sunlight coming through. And even though the dynamic range was large, it really latched on to the in this case, the Mola, and we got some phenomenal images. We were just really lucky that day.
Well, hopefully it's a little bit of skill involved. So I was shooting the new 14 to 35 lens. So just a little bit on it. It is a new RF mount, so it's designed to go straight onto the camera, no adapter needed. There's another similar lens out there, a 15 to 35.
Yeah.
That's a little bit less. It's a little bit more unwieldy in size. And while the 14 to 35 isn't cheap by any means at $1,700, you're looking at, $700 cheaper than the 15 to 35. Another thing I had to my advantage with that combination was that the camera has in-body image stabilization, or IBIS, and then the lens itself also has image stabilization. So if you pair the two together, you actually get an enhanced stabilization. So obviously for still shooters, you can go down to a slower shutter speed and do some more handheld stuff. I was shooting video, so that, was very a buttery, smooth transition. What lens were you shooting?
I was using 17 to 40, but I still had to use the old adapter because I don't have the new RF lenses. But even so, that I didn't have the new technology with the adapter, and it was locking on just perfect.
It seemed to be pretty seamless for you.
And I would say if we can afford to change this platform to go from a DSLR, until you've kind of got locked in, I would say use your old lenses with the adapter. From what my experience was, it seemed to work very, very well.
Now, I myself, and I feel like I speak for a lot of people here, was apprehensive about going to video. Same principles of light, of course, but you've got a whole nother level of motion, and you've got software and different things. The R5 is a killer video camera. I know historically you've not been a big video guy, so is this going to be something that I'm going to have to push you out of your comfort zone on?
I really think you do, and I'd like to sort of develop my, shall we say, my maturity underwater in terms of shooting photography. I tend to like the stills, and the reason I like that is because I felt I can be creative, and with the post-processing tools that we have, the modern tools that we can use today, I'm always looking for that little piece of art. But what I've noticed as we've dove together in the Caribbean and things like this to shoot some of the the whale shots and dolphin shots, and in my case over in Catalina, the seal shots, the video is going to be really a great tool. And I'm looking forward to, shall we say, the evolution of my own photography.
I think one of the things that we have to our advantage in that field is our society's lack of attention to time span attention. So when I started thinking about videos, like, I got to do a video that's, start to finish, and it tells a story, and it's, X number of minutes long. People don't have that attention span anymore. I'm going to use that to our advantage, and I'm going to just get the clips, and I'm going to just, with social media, etc. To have the clip, I think is of the cool creature, I think more than good enough. I mean,
I agree with you, because people want to see a 30-second to a minute clip.
Right.
Having a small YouTube video or just a personal video that you could show, say, your work colleagues, or share just within a photographic community. That's the way people would like to see video.
So on this note of the camera and video and all that, one of the things that, and we're both kind of new to this camera for sure. One of the things for me, sounds kind of a stupid thing to get hung up on, was like just switching between still and video. So before we went in, we were actually in the hotel room, and we were like, let's set up custom buttons.
Right.
And we set up the MFN button, right? And that was to toggle between video and still.
Yeah.
And then we set up the star key to do electronic viewfinder or LCD.
Yes.
Now, again, everything's fine-tuning when you're coming to tactics and shooting underwater and all that. But I can say that worked out pretty well.
For me, it worked out really well because not only have we customized the camera to the application, the real, I was only shooting still to be very frank with you. I know I just had a one button push and I could have switched to the video mode. But one thing it helped me is to concentrate on what I was trying to create. Because as we've talked before, I always try to think about the images in advance of what I really want to see. But to be able to just press one button and toggle between different screens, it was so simple to do. So my whole activity underwater was really just changing the aperture. And I think if you looked at some of the images I got, as I closed the aperture down, so I got a nice black background, and I opened it really up, so I got the nice light background. And so really it was just a case of then being able to change that kind of optical picture that I was trying to create.
So on that note, like you take what you've learned and you always apply it towards what you're moving towards. And a lot of the times what we're doing as photographers is just tool changes, right? And that's what we're doing here. Now, what were your overall thoughts of the controls between your 6D Mark II and going up to the R5, specifically both on the camera and like how that translated through the housing?
Yeah, I've used the 6D Mark II for now probably four years about. It's been a very solid platform in terms of I've understood the personality of it, and I've got used to working with it underwater and to use the controls underwater. It's been a great platform, but I think with the customization of the R5 and the simplicity of the housing that you've built, right now, really for the photographer, you've only really got three buttons to manipulate,
sure, right.
And it makes it so much easier. So it gives you more time to think about the composition, what you want to do, the fact that we can now track much faster, and the interface between the camera and the housing. It's a much more mature design, in my very honest opinion, because I was able to put the camera in simply. The connection between the lens was simple. The adjustments were very simple. So if you can customize the camera to the housing, and we did that in probably 15, 20 minutes, we save it as a memory function, and basically we've saved the button pushes. It makes life very simple for us.
Now, one thing that I've had the opportunity to have experience with is this electronic viewfinder, the EVF.
Yeah.
I've shot that on other mirrorless cameras, the Nikon Z series and all that over time. I shot it out west, topside. And so I've become very familiar with that system, generally speaking. And again, one of the benefits for me, topside especially, was, that you can kind of close out the rest of the world and you can focus. Right. You don't have to worry about being overpowered by the light around you and things like that. You see your heads-up display. You get to see a preview of the image. You get to see a preview of the image after you take the shot, which can be a little disorienting, but if you get used to it, it's a very valuable feature because you don't ever have to leave that zone of taking a picture and kind of getting a feel for it, micro-adjusting and then taking another picture. It seems odd to be like, well, I got to look down, but like now you don't have to do that. I like that underwater. Especially for macro photography, I do like, because when you're shooting something real little, then you lose it, especially if you go away and then you come back and you're like, where did it go?
Where is it?
Yeah, it was just here.
Yeah.
But now you can kind of keep an eye on it.
Yeah.
What's your first initial thought on getting into that?
Okay, because, as you know, I'm really new to the camera, and I was really new to the housing. I was comfortable with using the camera and the housing based on the customization we've given it. So when I actually took my first few shots, and it happened to be the Mola, I was sort of mid-water, and there was nobody kind of around me, and I just thought, well, look, I'm just going to try what I understand the button sequencing is. So I would actually focus with the focus button, and it immediately tracked onto the eye, which was incredible. And then all I was really doing was adjusting the aperture on the housing itself. But once I took my first picture, my immediate reaction was, as I was thinking of my old camera, so I wanted to turn and look, but all of a sudden the image was actually displayed in the eyepiece. And I think I actually had some features maybe not quite set right, because the eyepiece seemed to be a little bit bright to me, but I noticed there's a slider button that I needed to probably adjust. So what I actually did, I did the same old technique where I wanted to play it back, and I pressed the preview button. I saw it on the small screen, and then I realized, I said, well, now I need to change my aperture a bit. And the fish was so curious about me, it gave me the opportunity to be able to make multiple changes and shoot. So that was kind of my first kind of feel for it, because as you know, we haven't had a lot of experience with it. I think as maybe if we have this conversation in a month's time, when I've had a little bit more experience with it, I think the sequencing we have now and the customization we have now, I think is perfect.
Well, we're gonna overlay the video with the images, your initial images, and I want to reiterate that that was the first time
I've ever used the camera.
That you've used that camera underwater.
Yeah.
We're not making this up.
No, this is what you see is, as we used to say, WYSIWYG. What you see is what you get.
There you go.
Yeah, and really the shall we say, the creative juices flowing in there was, I could see the image I want with the opportunity of shooting that's something that we don't often see. And the lighting and one thing we have to preface this is that we were so lucky in terms of the California to have that kind of visibility. It was really cold. It was maybe less than 60 degrees Fahrenheit.
Yep.
We were mid-water, and all of a sudden we've got the shoal of a very unusual fish.
The stars aligned for sure.
Yeah, the stars all aligned for us, and to have the opportunity to shoot this new platform with this high dynamic range and this great tracking system. Unfortunately, we'd customize things, to what we both understand. So I think we had a really good day.
That's a very promising.
Yeah, it's a promising start.
Step one.
And I'll be very frank with you. I was quite apprehensive to take it underwater, because obviously there's a lot of money tied up in the camera and the lens and the housing. So I pressurized the housing and
sure. Right.
I did the sequencing which I normally go through with the original housing. But if I had the option to go underwater now, and I've set the 6D Mark II down there and the new R5, I would really.
It's a no-brainer at this point.
Right now, based on the experience I've had, it is a total no-brainer.
I'm super excited to see what you come up with, and you can bet that I'm going to be pushing you for video.
Yeah, and I will try.
You'll do it.
Yeah, especially if we're lucky
enough. Flip a button.
Yeah, if we can get into the sea lions, and we can set the strobes right. I think it's going to be.
Can't wait to see what the tracking goes there.
It's going to be a killer. Yeah.
Well, as always, thank you.
My pleasure.
Chatting about the R5. I can't wait to see what you do with it.
Yeah, I'm really happy to have this chat. It's just it's been a great experience to dive with you and you and Gene, and I was just thrilled having this opportunity to do this.
Well, we'll just have to come back out. I'll see you at Long Beach and
I hope so.
for the show.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, buddy.
Bye.
See ya.
Good to.